He's a complete pathological liar.
Let's be honest. There are outsiders coming into communities, stealing and moving jobs away, and making life harder for people living there. And they have names: Donald Trump and J.D. Vance.
Complete liar. Lied about being in Tiananmen Square. Lied about being a head coach of a football team.
Because this started, and I love this story, as a young prosecutor. Kamala Harris talked about going in that courtroom for the first time.
Pathological liars. People that are habitual liars. They just lie all the time about everything. Yeah. Oh, you didn't deploy for war. You didn't. Why are you saying you deployed at war? The weapons you used in war? No. You were in war.
I plan on waking up on November 6th with Madam President.
I want to be clear. You won't be waking up together.
No, you weren't a head coach. You were the water boy. The f*** are you talking about?
I thought some of that was weird.
He's just a liar.
Walz says Democrats hate success.
We as Democrats, we want people to pay their fair share, but why are we against people being successful like that? We can't be. Why are we against? We should talk about businesses. Not all businesses exploit their workers, and we get ourselves stuck in that.
Oh, well,
and I think we lose them.
Get a room. Oh, wait, they were in a room. Vince.
This is the guy that was rooting against Tesla stock.
Yeah, exactly.
This is the same guy.
No, it's amazing that this.
Something absolutely wild just exploded live on air, and nobody saw it coming. Joe Rogan's eyes widened. Greg Gutfeld nearly choked on his drink, and Tim Walz, let's just say he might still be buffering. This wasn't a debate. It was a public meltdown dressed as a discussion. What on earth did Walz say that made both Rogan and Gutfeld freeze mid-sentence? The internet can't stop replaying it. Memes are flying, reactions are exploding, and timelines are melting down, faster than a politician caught without a script. This was supposed to be a talk, but it turned into a verbal demolition derby. Get ready, because this political showdown just transformed into a national roast session, and no one is walking away unscathed.
I don't know. Tim Walz is out there talking again.
Did you say he could fight any Trump supporter?
Yeah, he says he kicked and they're scared of him because he could fix a truck. Like they're threatened by his masculinity. I know how to fix a truck. That's what he said. I'm like, do you? I bet you don't.
The lady doth protest too much.
I bet you don't.
I fear.
I bet if I bring a broken truck to you and a bag of tools.
That was
Kamala's VP, Tim Walz, is being accused of lying about his rank, which is called stolen valor. But in Walz's defense in Minneapolis, stealing is legal.
What happens when Joe Rogan and Greg Gutfeld dive headfirst into a fiery discussion about lockdowns, mandates, and political smokescreens? You get chaos on the run, faster than a press secretary dodging a question. It starts slow. Rogan lifts an eyebrow, Gutfeld leans forward, and somewhere in Minnesota, Tim Walz's team is probably typing "how to disappear from the internet" into Google. This wasn't just a talk. It was a two-man action comedy roasting session. The main act? A governor who turned leadership into an Olympic sport of contradictions. Every line was sharper than the last, every laugh louder, and by the end, it felt less like an interview and more like a takedown caught live. First, let's talk about the man at the center of this political storm, Tim Walz, the governor with a resume as unpredictable as his pandemic playbook. Once a mild-mannered teacher with a dream, he stepped into office with confidence, that friendly Midwestern grin, and promises of data-driven progress. But somewhere between spreadsheets and speeches, the data didn't just fail, it went up in flames.
Tim Walz continues to be criticized for embellishing his rank in service. After it came out over the weekend, he once claimed to be an official bikini inspector. Walz's direct superior in the National Guard says Walz knew his unit was about to deploy to Iraq and went behind the back of his superior officer to resign. When reached for comment, Walz yelled, "Hey, look over there," and then ran away.
You haven't seen that? No. The video of him taking down the Minnesota flag and he replaced it with the new flag that looks a lot like the Somali flag. Minnesota has a huge population of Somalis in it.
Oh, wait a minute.
So he gets the flag, picks it up, moves it out of the way, and replaces it. Look at this.
There, that's better.
Why is that better?
I don't know.
One moment he was proudly declaring he'd follow the science, and the next he was improvising policy like a late-night jazz player on too much caffeine and zero preparation. It was chaos disguised as leadership, and the encore, a headline explosion no one could look away from. Before everything spiraled into chaos, Tim Walz had the image of that cheerful, approachable neighbor, the guy who waves too long while watering his lawn. But when COVID stormed in, that friendly grin vanished faster than hand sanitizer at a grocery store. It was like he threw every rulebook into a blender, hit puree, and served the results as policy. Gyms locked down, churches closed, local diners and cafes shuttered without warning. But here's the twist. When massive protests erupted, suddenly the health risks didn't apply. Apparently, the virus decided to take a coffee break whenever politics showed up. It was an upside-down world of contradictions, and people couldn't believe the double standard playing out right in front of them. One week it was safety first, the next it was exceptions for causes we like. The confusion was so wild, it felt less like government guidance and more like a late-night improv skit gone wrong. By the time anyone tried to make sense of it, public trust had already started cracking, and Walz was too deep in his own mess to notice.
Kennedy, I like it. Like, what a better way to show their opposition to successful people than making him VP. He's the best example of failing up.
Yeah, and he didn't even do good at failing up because he helped tank the ticket and she lost the race because it showed, like, Tim Walz is the best example for why Kamala Harris has the worst political instincts in the Democrat Party, which is, I mean, it's a low bar, but...
This was a man who treated emergency powers like a kid discovering cheat codes in a video game. Every time people asked when the restrictions would end, he rolled out another executive order like he was collecting trophies. And those mask mandates, what a circus. Masks on, masks off, masks required if you're moving, but optional if you're sitting still. At one point, people joked you needed a decoder ring just to understand the rules. It stopped feeling like guidance and started feeling like riddles wrapped in red tape. That's when Joe Rogan stepped in, squinting at the logic like a guy sniffing something suspicious in the fridge. Rogan's never been one to trust smug politicians who act like they're the only ones with internet access. He couldn't wrap his head around why playgrounds were sealed with caution tape while liquor stores stayed open like holy shrines. Watching him tear into the hypocrisy was pure entertainment, like seeing a bear carefully peel a banana before smashing it to mush anyway. Each example he gave made the madness more obvious. Government overreach dressed up as science, and people were finally waking up to it.
Thank you all. Thank you all. Well, welcome to the Capitol. It's great that you're all... Sir, you're welcome to come. Let me finish. Let me finish and vote.
Hey, sir, he doesn't have fucking votes, sir. Shut your fucking mouth.
Hack at Politico writes this piece on the body language from the debate, claiming that it speaks volumes. Yeah, it says that Walz lost, but one of them at Politico says it's like Walz's wide eyes showed his passion and emotional intensity. Can we show that? There is his wide eyes.
And just when it seemed Walz couldn't sink any deeper, Greg Gutfeld stormed into the spotlight, armed with sarcasm and a grin sharp enough to cut steel. Where Rogan exposed the contradictions, Gutfeld turned them into a full-blown comedy act. His punchlines landed harder than political press releases ever could. He painted Walz not as a leader in crisis, but as a man who saw a fire and tried to put it out with glitter. The absurdity wrote itself, banning indoor dining, but allowing outdoor igloos with windows, because apparently the virus couldn't figure out how to use a door. Each restriction change felt like it was pulled from a hat by someone guessing. Small business owners were told to hang in there, only for new rules to drop midweek like bad surprises. It wasn't policy, it was chaos in a suit. Gutfeld mocked it all with the precision of a stand-up comedian at a truth-telling convention. The crowd couldn't decide whether to laugh, cry, or demand refunds for common sense. His takedown made one thing clear. Walz's leadership didn't just wobble, it practically tripped over its own contradictions.
And he was 100% right with Tim Walz.
I know I'm doing something right when the Fox News crowd is all pitching at me like crazy. Like, I'm loving it.
That guy was almost the vice president of the United States.
Elon Musk was crying last week. Tim is being mean to me, basically, you know, like, yeah.
I'm sure you've seen that thing where it shows Obama saying, I need a vice president that's dumber than me.
He may or may not have cognitive decline problems at his age, but at her age, she's just dumb.
Biden and Biden saying, I need a vice president.
Rogan couldn't hold back anymore. He had to call out the insanity. He slammed the hypocrisy straight on. The working class got crushed while the elites stayed cozy behind Zoom screens. Barbers, gym owners, mechanics, real people with real jobs lost everything, while officials enjoyed stable paychecks and perfect lighting for their virtual meetings. Rogan raged about kids thrown into digital chaos, while politicians' children breezed through private schools like nothing happened. Gutfeld turned that fury into pure comedy, joking that Walz must have had a wheel of mandates labeled "mask up," "blame the feds," "pretend it's fine," or "make a new rule." Each day, he'd spin it with a grin and call it leadership. The result? A government that looked more like a game show than a functioning system. And just when it couldn't get worse, they dragged the George Floyd unrest back into the mix. Cities in flames, chaos everywhere, and leadership nowhere to be found. The duo turned that failure into a spectacle, one part fury, one part farce, and every second of it stung with truth.
Have you ever seen that video?
No.
This is what people love about Donald Trump. The fact that he would say this.
But unfortunately, Governor Walz isn't here himself, but don't worry, he'll say that he was. He's going to say he was. I used to think the Democrats were crazy for saying that men have period, but then I met Tim Walz.
It's hard to even bring him up. He has a resting snitch face. You know? I mean, he forfeited his man card during COVID and the riots. And you're right. And also, at that diner, of course, he left early.
Walz spent more time figuring out who was in charge than actually being in charge. It was like watching a game of hide and seek, where accountability never got found. Rogan came loaded with receipts, crime rates, property losses, and economic collapse, while Gutfeld turned every statistic into a punchline sharp enough to sting. Together, they turned a leadership disaster into a roast that felt more like therapy for frustrated citizens. Gutfeld called it government cosplay, saying Walz dressed the part of a leader but acted like a substitute teacher who'd lost both the class and the homework. Every joke hit with a mix of humor and truth that couldn't be ignored. The tragic part, it wasn't just a political fumble, it was real people paying the price. Families struggling, businesses shuttered, neighborhoods scarred, all while Walz looked for someone else to blame. Rogan laughed in disbelief. Gutfeld doubled down with satire, and what was left was a reminder that leadership isn't about titles. It's about showing up when everything falls apart.
Tim's odd greeting, the man of the hour. Tim Walz brings us our second video of the day, and he's got a very weird way of greeting his wife of 30 years. Roll it. I want to see this in slow motion. You'll see Walz extends his hand to his wife. She grabs it. They shake. He pulls her close and then goes in for that non-friction hug, all the while still shaking her hand. I wish there was a word to describe that. Oh, yeah, weird.
That's when Joe Rogan finally entered the ring. Not with a tie or a script, but with that signature glare and enough energy to power an entire podcast studio. You could feel the tension building before he even spoke. Because while Tim Walz was busy mastering the art of indecision, Rogan was watching the circus unfold in real time. His nonsense detector was going off like fireworks. He didn't just question the hypocrisy, he blasted it through a megaphone. Small businesses got crushed under restrictions, fined into oblivion, while massive corporations glided through lockdowns untouched, sipping profits like VIP guests at a private event. The contrast was outrageous. Rogan's voice thundered as he asked why science always seemed to favor the rich and connected. It wasn't fairness, it was favoritism in disguise. Every word hit like a punch, exposing how leadership turned into theater, and the people were the audience paying for tickets they never asked to buy. On his podcast, Gutfeld ripped everything apart with raw, unfiltered honesty that made listeners stop mid-scroll and ask, wait, what did he just say? In one unforgettable episode, he sliced through performative politics like carving up a Sunday roast. It looked polished on camera, but it was pure nonsense underneath.
We're getting scary close to people justifying totalitarian measures.
I think we need to push back on this.
Tim Walz in the campaign trail was literally saying free speech doesn't include hate speech and misinformation.
There's no guarantee to free speech on misinformation or hate speech, and especially around our democracy.
Hey man, you. Because everything that we called misinformation just a few years ago, it's on the front page of the New York Times now.
It's amazing how they operate one way when they're running, and then when they lose and get humiliated, all of a sudden they have these solutions, and they're all the things they're telling you to do. Like, why are you trying to trash one of the most successful companies in the world, you moron?
And they never did that because they all used to love Trump when Trump was giving them money.
Yeah.
Then Trump became like Rodney Dangerfield in Caddyshack.
Yeah.
He crashed their party, showed up at the White House, and he was just like, hey, you know what? We should put like a casino over there, an MMA ring over there.
The takedown wasn't loud or messy. It was surgical, sharp, and devastating. Every contradiction Walz made was exposed. Every confusing order turned into a punchline that landed with brutal precision. What remained was a governor standing in the ruins of his own decisions, wondering why the applause had stopped. But this wasn't just about Walz. It was about something bigger, the collapse of public trust. When leaders pretend to lead, then blame the chaos they created, the people always pay the price. Minnesota's economy crumbled, small businesses vanished, and approval ratings sank like a rock in deep water. Even longtime supporters began to whisper, wait, we voted for this? While other governors admitted mistakes, Walz clung to denial like a life raft. Rogan delivered the final truth bomb. We're not saying don't lead. We're saying stop pretending you are. And just like that, Walz's political legacy went up in flames, roasted not by rage, but by laughter, facts, and the rare kind of honesty that cuts deeper than any scandal ever could.